and welcome to the 6.5 Summit. I'm Shelley Kramer, one of the founding partners and a principal analyst here at Futurum Research. And on behalf of my team here at Futurum and the team at Moor Insights Strategy, welcome. We're so glad you're here. In this spotlight session, Patrick Moorhead of Moor Insights is joined by Dave Brown, the Vice President of Amazon EC2 at AWS, for a conversation around AWS's Silicon innovation and their latest Graviton3 announcement. Let's go hear what Dave has to say.
Dave, it's great to see you, and thank you for coming to the 6.5 Summit again. This is great. Last year, you announced the AWS Graviton Challenge, and boy, seems like you've been making a lot of progress since then.
Well, Pat, thanks very much for having me, and it's really great to be back. It's hard to believe it's been a year already. Time flies, but yeah, last year was huge. We announced the Graviton Challenge right here. And that was a huge success for us. After announcing it, we had thousands of developers actually download the 4-day plan to move to Graviton. And so we were very, very happy with what happened. But as you say, it's been an incredibly busy year for us as well. And it was just a couple of weeks ago that we actually launched our 500th Ec2 instance, which was quite a milestone for us. That obviously from 2006 to 2022, being able to launch 500 different types of instances, from compute to memory to networking, storage capabilities, all to be able to best meet what our customers are trying to do with their workloads. And some of those things include, recently launching both Intel Ice Lake and AMD Milan processors. We've also expanded our accelerators to include Habana accelerators, as well as NVIDIA's A10G and the A100 GPUs. We've also improved some of our storage optimized instances and actually added a new feature to our Nitro services with the AWS Nitro SSD, which is the first time that we've actually built our own SSDs as well, now as part of what we do at AWS. And that's allowed customers to get much better I/O performance. And then obviously, as we spoke about last time, Graviton has taken a huge leap forward with the launch of the AWS Graviton3 processor, which is on our first 7th generation instance that's available. So it's been quite a year.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm an ex-compute guy and appreciate everything that you do. And the way that I like to describe it is you decommoditized compute. Gosh, I remember I think 10 years ago, people were like, "It's commodity, right?" And then it's like, nope, it's not. And I'm a believer that you commoditize yourself, and what you're doing with a combination of internally designed silicon, and you're partnering with companies like AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA is pretty awesome. So yeah, I mean, a few weeks back, you cranked out yet another generation of Graviton. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. I mean, as you say, we want to make sure we support whatever our customers need. So whether it's Intel or AMD, obviously Graviton. But the one thing that drives us, you're speaking about commoditizing compute, the thing that drives us is bringing customers more performance at a lower price. And honestly, that's been the thing that's driven us year over year over year, is how do we do that? And, the Graviton processors is really coming out of that drive that we've had for price performance, to really see what can we do for customers to improve performance significantly at a lower price, give them better price performance for as wide a variety of workloads as possible. And so with Graviton 2 that came out in 2019, that actually provided the best price performance across 12 different instance families on EC2 in 23 different regions. And that's actually the best price performance that we have available on EC2 today. Over the last year and a bit, we've also expanded Graviton 2 to be able to support other AWS services. So whether it's Amazon Aurora, Elasticache, EMR, we even have Lambda that's come out recently, and Fargate in the container space. And so it allows customers to take advantage of that price performance on ARM very, very simply. And we've seen tens of thousands of customers do that. Actually, 48 of our top 50 EC2 customers actually use Graviton 2 today in a meaningful way in their workloads. And so it's been very, very exciting to see that. But the thing that customers always do for us is they always have that next workload that needs more compute. It's more compute intensive. They're looking for more price performance improvement as well. And so that's where Graviton 3 came in. And Graviton 3 is actually a huge leap forward in the technology. And so we're not slowing down at all, from what we had in Graviton 2. We learned from that. There were a couple of areas we wanted to improve. And that's what you see in Graviton 3. And so Graviton3 actually offers up to 25% better performance over what you got with Graviton2. And that 25%, we're not a company that kind of believes in benchmarks where, we've tweaked the benchmark and got it just right, but it's not something that any customer would really see. That's kind of like probably on the lower end of, what we expect most customers to actually see. It also brings you 2 times higher floating point performance, which is really important for a lot of compute workloads. And then 2 times faster cryptographic workload performance as well. And that was one of the areas in Graviton2 that we really wanted to improve. And then actually 3 times better machine learning workload performance. And so you can see it's just a huge step forward in all of those metrics. It's also the first instance in the cloud that's generally available to actually support DDR5 memory. As you know, that's the next version of memory, RAM, out there that's going to be available. And so we're excited to do that, which because of that, it brings 50% more memory bandwidth as well. And then super importantly, we're all looking at our carbon footprint today, and many of our customers are working with us and saying, how do we optimize? How do we become carbon neutral? And Graviton3 actually offers 60% less energy consumption, to actually perform the same workload on Graviton3 versus the equivalent x86 based instance uses 60% less energy. And so it's really becoming a meaningful part of our energy efficiency internally within AWS as we look at a lot of workloads running on Graviton, but also for many of our customers as they want to do that. And so as you mentioned, just a few weeks ago, we did launch our C7G instance. So I was very happy to get that out there. It's been very exciting over the last few weeks to see, watch Twitter and see what customers are doing. And so we're excited to see where that goes.
Just one of the things that I really appreciate is your conservatism with your claims. Dave, I spent 10 years in systems and 11 years at a processor company. I know how to pick apart numbers, and maybe I've been involved in a little benchmarking before in the day. But what you did is you really made conservative commitments. You undercommitted and over-delivered. And as an industry analyst, I appreciate that, but I also know that customers appreciate, particularly when you bring something out new, it's important to engender trust. The one interesting thing that's unique about when you make your performance claims is this is inside your environment, right? Yep. And there are some really cool things that you can do to get even bigger levels of performance. But let's talk about Graviton3. Let's drill down. You said 25% increased performance, 2 to 3x floating point, and crypto workloads. Can you talk a little bit more in depth, maybe from what the customers are seeing from C7G instances?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, we're happy with the way that we talk about these numbers as well. We want to make sure that as broad a set of customers actually see the performance claim. As I said earlier, it's not something we, specific benchmark, but we really actually run real world workloads. And then we kind of look at those workloads and say, what do we think is a number that most customers would see for their workload? And so it's been really good to see that, both on Graviton2 and then on Graviton3, during the private preview, which we started last year at reInvent in December, we've had, literally hundreds of customers actually use Graviton2 and benchmark and then, run the application, what I mean by benchmark. So, customers like Epic Games, Formula One, Nextroll, Snap, Sprinkler, and even Twitter have actually evaluated their workloads on C7G instances over the last couple of months. And so some of the numbers have been really interesting. Twitter, they were testing on Graviton2. And so we gave them a Graviton2 C7G instance, and they actually ran a variety of workloads. And what they saw is they saw a performance improvement from 20% to 80% for some of their workloads. So some of their workloads were actually 80% faster on Graviton3 than they were on Graviton2. And then they actually also saw a reduction in tail latency, so up to 35%. So not only was it faster, it was just a lot more consistent as well. And Formula One is one of my favorite forms of motor racing, and I enjoy working with that team. And they've been doing a lot of computational fluid dynamics work on AWS over the last few years. And I think you can see it in this year's racing, how it's changed some of the wheel-to-wheel racing that we're now seeing. But they actually tested Graviton3 as well, and they saw a 40% performance improvement over C6G. And Sprinkler observed 27% better performance. And then One of the companies that's really gone all in on Graviton is actually Honeycomb.io. They actually just announced 100% of their fleet is now running on Graviton instances. But when they tested Graviton3, they actually saw 35% better performance, and then also a 30% reduction in latencies. It's, again, similar to what Twitter had seen. So really, it's just across the board, and it's one thing for us to benchmark it. But I think what customers really love is actually seeing some of the real world workloads and results from other customers, whether it's on Twitter or in blog posts or things we put out there. That's the thing that really makes Graviton so popular.
You had me at Formula One, Dave. Maybe after the show we can compare notes on that. But I'm a big Formula One fan and appreciate how much technology goes into the design. I mean, literally changing the design of the cars every year. Some companies were able to react to it better than others, as we've seen this season. It's incredible. So in the spirit of conservatism, one thing that I noticed was in first generation Graviton, you were very clear. You bracketed the types of applications that the customer should use, and then in Graviton 2, you widened it a little further. So what more can I do in C7G with Graviton 3, or maybe in other words, what workloads are you recommending for Graviton 3?
Yeah, absolutely. Graviton 1, or Graviton, before we added the number, that was really just a processor that we put out there. It was our A1 instance. It was a single instance. There was never a plan to make it available more broadly. And it was really to spark the ecosystem. It was an experiment on our part, really, to tell customers and to tell the ecosystem, ISVs, open source software, operating systems, that ARM's coming to the cloud. And it had an enormous impact. Just in a year, we saw massive explosion of growth. Graviton 2, we said, we really want to make this available on any instance type that we think having an ARM-based or Graviton-based processor actually makes sense. And so you saw us do that on 12 different instance types, all the way from compute to memory to storage and memory optimized, all sorts of things. And Graviton 3 will absolutely go the same way. So you'll see us launch Graviton 3 across a number of different instance types as well, each one carefully designed for what the customer needs to do. C7G, though, is the first of these Graviton 3 instances, and that's a compute optimized instance. So what we mean by that is it actually has 1 to 2 vCPU to memory ratio. And so, for most of our instances, customers are actually looking at how much memory do I get in terms of gigabytes of memory do I get to every virtual CPU, virtual core, essentially, that I have on the processor. And so that's how, so this is a 1 to 2 ratio being compute optimized, a little bit less memory than you'd have on some of our other instance types. But it's really focused on those applications that are compute intensive. And so anything that you have that is compute intensive, or maybe needs higher compute power, CPU power, higher floating point performance, and obviously that cryptographic performance. If you're doing any sort of SSL or anything along those lines, you'll see a big improvement. And so applications that can take better advantage of the faster memory bandwidth, also of DDR5, is something that would work very well. But anything along those lines. So to get to the specifics, what we see customers run on these types of instances are typically compute-intensive application servers and microservices. That's sort of the parts of your distributed system, parts of your control plane you typically run. Obviously, in a world where analytics is a big thing, distributed analytics applications, ad serving on the internet. We have a lot of customers that run ad serving applications. High-performance computing, talking about Formula One, this has been a huge area for Formula One to do computational fluid dynamics, is the HPC space. And then even machine learning, whether it's inference or some lower levels of training in machine learning, media encoding. And then obviously we have a lot of customers that run gaming as well. So it's anything that needs a little less memory, but an enormous amount of compute. And so that's well suited. Over time, you'll absolutely see us do more with Graviton 3, but that's where we're starting right now.
If somebody would have told me 10 years ago that a processor that was internally developed by a cloud company would be doing the highest level of performance, I just would have said, you're nuts. That's just not going to happen. Good luck with that. And so the fact that it can do high performance computing, HPC, media coding, gaming is super impressive to me. And certainly, it's a 10-year journey of in-house silicon. I mean, you don't just start this thing up and call it a day. I think some people forget the decade of investment that you put into it. So
that's right.
Exciting stuff. How do developers who are watching right now, how do they get started?
It's really simple. I mean, as with using anything on EC2, it's literally an API call or a console click away. And, we do have that portfolio of 13 different instance families. And so the most important thing is find the instance that you want to start with, that you think is best suited for your workload. Whether that's, burstable. We have our T instance family, T4G on Graviton, which is, much, much cheaper on the lower end and burstable performance. And then compute optimized, memory optimized, storage optimized, even accelerated computing workloads. We have, last year we launched our first Graviton and a GPU-based instance for the gaming space, which is really interesting. So you just pick that and work out what it is. And, available across the 23 regions, so there's one close to you. And with C7G specifically right now, it's available in 2 of our largest US regions, and we'll be expanding that over the coming months. The other thing we also have available is we actually have a free trial available as well with Graviton. We've actually just improved that. We actually increased the size of the instance that you get as part of that free trial. And so you actually get a T4G instance, T4G small instance that you can use for a month, 750 hours per month. And use that to really, test your workload, test the operating system, recompile. And so it's a way to actually do the port to Graviton completely free from Amazon. If you want to look at managed services as well, that's the other place that customers really just find it super easy, specifically in like a database space. They say, hey, I can get that performance improvement in a MySQL Postgres database. Let me just go and use Amazon Aurora. Or in the container space, let me use Fargate or even Lambda serverless. Let me go use Lambda for that. So there's just a lot of simple ways to actually get going. We also have a very growing Graviton partner network now, with many, many companies out there looking to partner with us. And so if you go to the marketplace, you can find a lot of applications, ready to run on Graviton, whether it's security, monitoring, CI/CD, even container services, all there ready packaged and ready to go. So it's very simple. It's gone from the A1 instance that was very specific to really just a broad set of ways that you can actually make use of Graviton very simply in your environment and get that price performance benefit.
Yeah, I'll say it again, and sometimes this sounds like the mutual admiration society, but I know how hard silicon is to get right. And one thing about your strategy is it's not just about lower cost, but it's also about highest performance. So you're really trying to deliver both of them and do this not only from first-party silicon, but also working with your partners. So last question, any parting thoughts for the audience?
Yeah, I love the fact that you mentioned, some of our partners as well, whether it's Intel, who we've worked with for 15, 16 years on EC2 now, AMD, who we really brought to EC2 in a meaningful way in 2018, and the Milan processor from AMD is really performing very well. Well, NVIDIA, who we still use an enormous number of accelerators from them, and customers love that. The important thing is our customers want those processors and those accelerators in the cloud, and they have workloads that run very, very well on those, and we run workloads on those ourselves, and we'll continue to do for the foreseeable future. So that selection that's available is very, very important. And as you say, price performance is really, really good. What I often see, Pat, is a lot of companies will focus on the performance aspect actually, and then at a later point they go and decide how they want to price it, and often more performance means higher price. And what we've really been pushing is, well, more performance shouldn't mean higher price. There's this price performance equation that the thing is so important. So hopefully we'll see more of that across the broader industry over time. But you mentioned it earlier, this has been really a 10-year journey. I remember back in 2008 when we were looking at the cloud in the early days, and a lot of the analysts out there were saying, well, I'm not sure this cloud is ever going to work with 300 milliseconds of networking latency, and is it as good as bare metal? And back in the day, the virtualization stacks really just weren't what they needed to be to support the sort of workloads we had today. And that's what drove us from way back then to say, how do we think about this differently? How do we offload things like networking and storage to these accelerator cards? And these accelerator cards actually happen to be ARM-based, because we ended up buying Annapurna Labs as a chip manufacturer. My engineers started writing code for ARM. We started building operating systems for ARM. And that was the journey that really got us to where we are today. And so the Nitro system now runs all of our instance types with these Nitro offload cards. We just launched that Nitro SSD. And then obviously, as you continue that journey, you get to Graviton and what we've done in the processor space. And then obviously what we've done in the accelerator space with Inferentia and Trainium as well. And so, it's all been driven by this quest to give customers better price performance, and that'll continue to drive us. We continue to work backwards from the customer, understand what they need, and really building reliable, secure, and then scalable cloud infrastructure is kind of what we want to be at the end of the day. And so we can accelerate, our customers' business innovation, and allow them to bring pretty much any workload to the cloud and then run it in a very cost-effective way. And as I said earlier, one of the things I know is customers are going to continue to come back and say, well, Graviton3 was great, but can you give us a bit more? And so we're not going to slow down at all in terms of cost effectiveness and also that high performance. And so expect a lot more innovation from us over the years to come.
So Dave, one of the byproducts of what you're doing for your customer also impacts the overall industry. I mean, I look at what you did with Nitro, and now intelligent offload is kind of the industry thing, right?
Yeah.
After you created that, and not just for the public cloud, but also for on-prem. That's the direction that they're going. So
Yeah.
I feel like your investments are not only impacting your customers, but also raising the water level for the entire industry. And I think challenging the industry to do things better, and that sometimes you don't get a lot of credit for that. But I think those in the industry who know see what's happening and the response that the industry has had.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And if what we do does drive the industry to ultimately give better price performance in other areas, or better solutions in other areas, and I have better processes or better accelerators, that's something that benefits my end customer as well. So that's a good thing.
Absolutely. So Dave, I'm looking forward to reInvent coming up, and you always have more announcements that I can ever consume. But I'm a product guy, I love it. But I'm looking forward to it. And thank you so much for coming on the show again. And I think it's been very valuable. And next year, let's do this again. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Pat. It's always great to be here. And so thank you for the time. Thank you.